Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are opening a case file that, quite honestly, feels like it shouldn't exist. It's a story that starts with a few nasty letters in a small town and spirals into booby traps, mysterious deaths, and a prison sentence that somehow didn't stop the crime. We are heading to Circleville, Ohio.
It really is the ultimate gaslight. Picture this. It's 1977, small town, population around, 11,000 people. It's the kind of place where the biggest news is usually the annual pumpkin show. It looks like a Norman Rockwell painting. But beneath that veneer of Main Street, USA, something incredibly dark was brewing.
We're talking about the Circleville letters, and I want to be clear right off the bat. This isn't just about some neighborhood bully sending mean notes. This is about a system, an omnipresent, invisible entity that terrorized an entire community for nearly 2 decades. We aren't just here to read mail. We're here to figure out how a ghost managed to hold a town hostage.
And that brings us to our first key concept for this deep dive, the panopticon. It's a concept from the 18th century philosopher Jeremy Bentham. Imagine a prison where the cells are arranged in a circle, and in the center there is a single guard tower. The trick is, the prisoners can't see into the tower. They never know if the guard is watching them at that specific moment or not.
So they have to assume they are always being watched.
Exactly. The fear becomes internalized. You police yourself because the eye of the authority might be on you at any second. That is precisely what happened to the residents of Circleville starting in March of 1977. The letter writer proved, very early on, that they knew everything. Who was sleeping with whom, where people's kids went to school, what cars they drove, what they did inside their own homes. The residents began to live in a state of constant low-level paranoia because the guard, in this case the writer, could be anyone. Your neighbor, your boss, the person begging your groceries.
Our mission today is to take apart this mechanism of terror. I'm going to focus on the physical mystery, the ballistics, the timeline, the logistical impossibility of the crimes, particularly that botched booby trap and the solitary confinement alibi. Because when you look at the hard evidence, the timeline is, frankly, a mess.
And while you look at the hardware, I'm going to look at the software. The psychology of obsession. We're dealing with handwriting analysis, toxic family dynamics, and a campaign that suggests a mind that isn't just angry, but is systematically trying to dismantle people's identities. We need to figure out, was this a single mastermind, or was it some kind of contagion that infected the whole town?
Okay, let's rewind. March 1977, Section 1. The campaign begins. Now, unlike a serial killer who might pick victims at random, this writer had a very specific target zero. Her name was Mary Gillespie.
Mary was a school bus driver. By all accounts, she lived a pretty standard life. She was married to a man named Ron Gillespie. But then one day she opens her mailbox and finds the first letter. And visually, this thing is striking. It isn't just scribbled. It's written in these big block letters. Very angular, almost architectural. It looks deliberate.
And the content is immediate and blunt. It accuses her of having an affair with the school superintendent, Gordon Massey. Now, Gordon Massey is a public figure in town, so this isn't just a personal attack. It's a political scandal in the making.
But listen to the phrasing. The letter says, Mrs. Gillespie, stay away from Massey. I've been observing your house and know you have children. That phrase right there, I've been observing your house. That shifts the dynamic instantly. This isn't just a rumor. This is a stalker.
And that's a crucial distinction, isn't it? A rumor monger talks to other people about you. A stalker talks to you about you.
Right. And notice the leverage. The writer immediately targets her vulnerability, her children. In a subsequent letter, the threat escalates drastically. It says, and I'm quoting here, "It's your daughter's turn to pay for what you've done. I shall come out there and put a bullet in that little girl's head."
That is just, it's horrific. That goes from I'm telling on you to I'm going to execute your family.
It's pure terror. It suggests the writer views themselves as a sort of moral crusader. A relationship Batman, if you will, but completely twisted. They aren't just reporting a sin, they are assigning a punishment. And the punishment is so disproportionate, threatening to execute a child because the mother is allegedly having an affair. That speaks to a deep pathological rage. This person believes they are the hand of God in Circleville.
What gets me, though, is the volume and the logistics. I want to emphasize the sheer work involved here. The writer didn't just send these to Mary. They shotgunned them across the entire town. The school board got them, the newspapers got them, elected officials got them, Gordon Massey's wife got them. And physically, none of them had a return address. They were all postmarked from Columbus, Ohio.
Which is about 25, 30 miles north of Circleville?
Correct. So practically speaking, think about the effort. The writer is sitting somewhere, Writing these are hundreds, eventually thousands of words in disguised block lettering. Then they are physically getting in a car, driving 30 miles round trip to Columbus to drop them in a mailbox, specifically to obscure the trail. This isn't a crime of passion. This is a part-time job. They had to have a system.
It implies a deep obsession. And let's talk about that handwriting for a second, because this becomes the linchpin of the whole case later on. It looked disguised, but it was consistently disguised.
Yeah.
They basically created a font for themselves. There were these very distinctive W's, and as we'll see later, a very peculiar way of writing the letter G. It's almost like they created a brand identity for their terror campaign.
So Mary is just getting hammered with these letters, but then the target widens. Her husband, Ron Gillespie, starts getting them. And the writer gives him this chilling ultimatum. Mr. Gillespie, your wife is seeing Gordon Massey. Catch them together and kill them both.
That is a fascinating psychological pivot. The writer isn't just threatening Mary anymore. They are trying to weaponize Ron. They're trying to incite a murder-suicide. They're telling Ron, you are the man of the house, restore your honor. They're trying to push him into being the executioner so the writer doesn't have to get their own hands dirty.
And Ron and Mary are, understandably terrified. They circle the wagons. They actually bring in Ron's sister, Karen Sue Freshour, and her husband, Paul Freshour. They have a family meeting about this. Initially, they suspect a different bus driver, a guy named David Longberry.
The jilted lover theory, right. Longberry apparently made a pass at Mary once. She rejected him, so the theory was he's doing this for revenge. It fits the profile of a scorned man.
And Paul Freshour, the brother-in-law, he actually steps up here. He writes letters back to Longberry, basically saying, we know it's you, back off. It's an attempt at counter-intimidation, but it doesn't work because the campaign shifts from the mailbox to the physical world. Signs start appearing along Mary's bus route.
Imagine the psychological toll of this. You are driving a school bus, you have 30 kids sitting behind you, and you look over and see a large handmade sign on a fence post. And it's describing these obscene sexual acts involving your own 12-year-old daughter. It's designed to break you. It's designed to make you crash that bus.
And Ron, the husband, he starts spending his mornings driving the route ahead of the bus, tearing these signs down. He is trying to scrub the town clean of this filth every single morning before his wife and the kids see it.
He's trying to regain some semblance of control, but the writer knows this. They are puppeteering him. They know his route. They know his schedule.
Which leads us to the breaking point. Section 2. The mysterious death of Ron Gillespie. It's August 19th, 1977.
This is the night the harassment turns into a body count. Ron receives a phone call at home. It's late. We don't know exactly what was said. That's one of the great lost pieces of evidence in this case. But the reaction tells us enough. Ron becomes enraged. He slams the phone down. He tells his daughter that he knows who the writer is, he recognizes the voice, and he is going to confront them.
He grabs his .22 caliber revolver, he gets into his red and white pickup truck, and he tears off into the night. Now, keep in mind, the writer had previously sent letters detailing Ron's truck, saying they were watching it. So Ron is driving into the dark, armed, believing he is finally going to meet this ghost.
And he never comes back.
He crashes into a tree on 5 Points Pike. It's a fatal crash. Now, let's unpack the physical mystery here, because the official ruling is, well, it's convenient. The sheriff, Dwight Radcliffe, rules it an accident due to drunk driving. The coroner finds Ron's blood alcohol content, his BAC, was .16.
For you listening, .16 is significant. That is twice the legal limit in most places today. That's not, I had a beer with dinner. That is, I am significantly impaired.
Right. Case closed, right. Guy gets drunk, gets mad, hits a tree. But the family insists Ron wasn't a heavy drinker. Witnesses who saw him leave said he didn't seem drunk. He was angry, sure, maybe full of adrenaline, but not stumbling around.
Could the rage have masked the alcohol? Maybe. But usually adrenaline and alcohol just make for a messy driver, not necessarily a fatal one on a road he knew like the back of his hand.
But here is the anomaly that keeps me up at night. The gun. They found Ron's .22 revolver under his body, and one shot had been fired. Just one. There was no casing found inside the truck.
Which implies?
Well, if he fired inside the truck, the casing should be in there somewhere. If he fired out the window, the casing might be gone. But who did he shoot at? Did he see the writer? Was he chasing someone? Paul Freshour, the brother-in-law, later claimed there were bullet holes in the truck, suggesting Ron was being shot at, that this was a rolling gunfight. But the sheriff shut down the foul play angle almost immediately. The truck was impounded and then disposed of pretty quickly.
That speed of closure is suspicious in itself. And psychologically, think about the aftermath. You'd think if the writer was just a prankster who went too far, Ron's death would scare them straight. Or if Ron was the writer, sending letters to himself to cover an affair or something, the letters would stop.
But they don't stop. They pivot.
The writer claims credit. New letters arrive. They accuse Sheriff Radcliffe of a cover-up. They say Radcliffe covered it up.
Right.
And then they turn on Mary and Gordon Massey again. They accuse them of murdering Ron. The writer is completely controlling the narrative.
It's gaslighting on a municipal scale. And here is the kicker. Mary eventually admits that the affair with Gordon Massey did happen. But, and this is a big but, she claims it started after the letters began.
Which, if that's true, is a wild example of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The writer accuses them of an affair so incessantly that they eventually bond over the shared trauma of the accusation.
Or the writer knew about a spark before it became a fire.
It's called a trauma bond. Two people under siege by the same enemy find solace in each other. Either way, the writer is now controlling the narrative of their lives completely. They created the very sin they were punishing.
Okay, fast forward. It's 1983, Section 3. The letters have been coming for 6 years. 6 years of this constant low-grade terror. But now the writer decides to escalate from psychological terror to potential physical violence. The booby trap.
February 7, 1983. Mary is driving her empty bus. She's approaching the intersection of Keogh-Darby Road and 5 Points Pike ominously, right near where her husband died. And she sees a sign on the fence. It's obscene. It's about her daughter again.
She stops the bus. She's furious. She gets out to tear it down. Now, usually you just rip the cardboard off the fence. But this time, the sign is attached to a box. And the box is tied to a post with twine. Mary, for whatever reason, maybe she wants evidence, maybe she's just in a rush, she doesn't rip the sign. She pulls a whole box off the post and takes it home with her.
And that simple decision saves her life. Because when she opens the box later, in the safety of her home, she finds a loaded .25 caliber pistol inside. It was rigged. The twine was attached to the gun's hammer. If she had ripped the sign off the fence the way you normally would, the tension would have pulled the trigger. It was a gun-in-a-box execution device.
This is where the physical evidence finally gives the police something to chew on. The gun. It's a tangible object. The serial number had been filed off, classic criminal move. But the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, the BCI, they managed to restore the number using acid etching techniques. They raised the digits, and they traced the gun.
It traces back to a coworker at the Anheuser-Busch plant in Columbus. And that coworker says, yeah, I sold that gun. To whom? To Paul Freshour, Ron's brother-in-law, the man who had been helping the family all along.
So boom, we have a suspect, Paul Freshour. Let's look at him for a second. He works at Anheuser-Busch. He's got a master's degree. He's a former prison guard. He seems like a stand-up guy. But you dig a little deeper, and his life is in chaos.
Right. At this exact moment, he is in the middle of a very messy, acrimonious divorce with Karen Sue, Ron's sister. It is ugly. There are allegations of abuse, of instability. Paul is under extreme stress.
So the police bring him in. Paul admits it's his gun. He doesn't deny that. But his story is, it was stolen. He says he kept it in his garage. He hasn't seen it in a while. Someone must have swiped it.
Which is, admittedly, the oldest excuse in the book. Some other dude did it.
But here's where the skeptic in me starts looking at the timeline. The day the booby trap was found, Paul took the day off work. He says he was doing home repairs. He has witnesses who saw him at home. But he fails a polygraph test. Now, we know polygraphs are largely junk science. They measure anxiety, not truth. But in 1983, that was damning.
And psych-wise, Paul fits a certain profile. He's intelligent, he's controlling, based on the divorce allegations, and he's arrogant enough to think he can talk his way out of it. He takes the polygraph voluntarily, he gives handwriting samples voluntarily, he acts like a man who thinks he is smarter than the cops.
Or a man who is genuinely innocent and thinks the truth will set him free.
That is the other option, yes.
So we go to trial, Section 4. The prosecution lays it up pretty simply. The gun is the smoking gun, literally. It's his gun in a box designed to kill his sister-in-law.
But the trial becomes less about the gun and more about the handwriting. They bring in forensics experts. They compare Paul's known writing, his job applications, his letters to friends, with the booby trap sign and the thousands of anonymous letters.
And this is where the infamous G comes in.
The G anomaly. This is the fingerprint of the case.
Yeah.
In the anonymous letters, the letter G is written very strangely. It looks like the number 6. It has this distinctive loop. And lo and behold, in Paul Freshour's known, everyday handwriting, he makes his G's look like 6s.
That is a very specific tick. It's hard to fake that consistently unless it's just natural to you.
It is. And for the jury, that connects all the dots. If Paul wrote the letters, And the letters threatened Mary, and Paul's gun was in the trap. Well, he's the guy.
But the defense, and honestly anyone looking at the physical evidence, has to have questions. There were no fingerprints on the gun, none on the box, none on the sign. Paul was never seen at the scene. And think about it. Paul is a smart guy, a former prison guard. Why would he use his own gun, which is registered to him, file the serial number so poorly that it can be restored, and then set a trap in his own neighborhood? It feels clumsy. It feels like a setup.
It does feel like a setup. But juries don't like coincidences. Gun plus handwriting equals guilty. Paul is convicted of attempted murder. He gets 7 to 25 years. Importantly, he is not charged with writing the letters. But the letters were used to establish motive and character.
So Paul goes to prison. Justice is served. The town can finally sleep easy. The ghost is in a cage. Except Section 5. The twist.
The letters don't stop.
They don't stop. Paul is locked up in Lima, Ohio. That is 100 miles away from Circleville. And yet, hundreds of letters keep pouring into the town. Still postmarked Columbus.
This is the part of the story that just breaks people's brains.
Let's look at the logistics of this because it's mind-boggling. The warden of the prison testified about this. He was adamant. Paul was in solitary confinement for a lot of this time. He was strip-searched constantly. He had no pens. He had no paper. All of his incoming and outgoing mail was monitored and read by guards. The warden literally wrote to Karen Sue Paul's ex-wife, stating that it was impossible for Paul to be the writer.
Impossible. That is a strong word for a warden to put on official record. Usually they cover their bases, you know.
And yet the letters appear. And they're not just generic, they are specific. Paul himself even receives one in prison. Imagine sitting in your cell and you get a letter from the Circleville writer taunting you. It says, "Freshour. When are you going to believe you aren't getting out of there? I told you 2 years ago. When we set them up, they stay set up."
When we set them up, they stay set up. That implies a conspiracy. A we. But let's play devil's advocate on the mastermind theory. Just because he's in solitary doesn't mean he can't do it.
How? Telepathy.
No. Pre-planning. What if he mass-produced hundreds of letters before he went in? Just vague enough to apply to general situations when watching you, you're dirty, that sort of thing. And then he has an accomplice, maybe a girlfriend, maybe a coerced family member, drop them in the mail on a schedule.
That would require insane foresight. It would mean he knew he was going to prison years in advance.
True. But look at the handwriting again. Beverly East, a forensic document expert who looked at this for the show 48 hours years later, she confirmed that the prison letters also had the G written as a 6. The handwriting didn't change. It was the same hand.
So either Paul is a magician or someone else has the exact same handwriting quirk.
Or he compromised a guard. He was a former prison guard himself. He knows the system. Maybe he charmed someone, bribed someone. Hey, nail this for me. And then there is the fingerprint evidence. Years later, they found fingerprints on some of the letters sent from Columbus while Paul was in prison, and those prints matched Paul Freshour.
Okay, that is damning. If his prints are on the letters postmarked while he is in solitary, either he touched the paper before he went in, which supports the pre-written theory, or he touched them inside and somehow got them out.
Exactly. The physical mystery suggests impossibility. But the forensic evidence, the prints, the handwriting says it's Paul. It suggests a level of obsession that transcends physical barriers. He is willing to rot in solitary just to keep the terror going.
But we cannot ignore the alternative theory, Section 6, because if Paul was framed, or even if he had help, who else benefits? We have to talk about the ex-wife, Karen Sue Freshour.
The divorce was nasty. If Paul goes to prison, she gets custody of the kids. She gets the property. She wins. And looking at the evidence discovery, she was the one who found the first letters that link Paul to the crime.
It's a little too convenient, isn't it? She found one in the toilet. She found them in the car trunk.
Hey, police, look what I found in the commode. It does feel staged. And then there is the unsolved mysteries angle. When the TV show came to town in 1993, there were reports of witness intimidation. A witness claimed Karen Sue was parked outside the interview location, taking photos of people who went in to talk. That is behavior that screams, I am protecting a secret.
It definitely suggests she had a stake in the narrative. Was she the writer, or did she just use the writer's existence to frame Paul for the booby trap?
And then there is the yellow El Camino. This is one of those details that just haunts me.
The ignored witness.
Yes. A bus driver, not Mary, saw a man standing by a yellow El Camino at the exact spot where the booby trap was found. This was maybe 20 minutes before Mary found it. The man was described as large, with sandy hair.
Paul Freshour had dark hair and was not described as large in that way.
And here's the kicker. Reports suggest Karen Sue's brother, or maybe a boyfriend she was seeing at the time, had a yellow El Camino.
And the police never investigated this lead.
Nope. They had their man. They had the gun owner. They didn't care about a yellow car. It feels like tunnel vision. They stopped looking for the truth once they found a convenient answer.
There is also the tragic angle of the son, Mark Freshour. Paul apparently suspected his son Mark stole the gun. He told a friend, quote, "Uncle Paul would have died before he'd see Mark go to jail. He thought his own son did it, maybe to protect his mom. Or maybe Mark was the writer."
Mark sadly took his own life in 2002. So we can't ask him. But it just adds another layer of complete family tragedy. The family imploded.
And we can't forget the threat to unsolved mysteries. In 1993, the show gets a postcard. "Forget Circleville, Ohio. If you come to Ohio, you El Sickos will pay." Signed, the Circleville writer. It's such a weird, specific phrase. Paul was just getting out of prison around this time? Was he starting up again? Or was the ghost letting everyone know they were still watching?
This brings us to the conclusion, the final debate. Because I am looking at this stack of evidence, and I am torn. It's a Rorschach test.
Whoa.
What do you see?
I see a frame-up. I really do. The lack of fingerprints on the gun, the booby trap that failed in a way that preserved the evidence perfectly, almost as if it wasn't meant to go off, just meant to be found, the found letters by the ex-wife, the yellow El Camino, and the sheer logistical impossibility of the prison letters. Even if Paul was a genius, mailing hundreds of letters from solitary confinement without a single guard blowing the whistle, it strains credulity. It feels like someone on the outside was orchestrating it to keep him in there. When we set him up, they stay set up. That sounds like a confession from the real perpetrator.
I see that side. I really do. But I can't get past the handwriting. The G is a 6. That is subconscious. That is muscle memory. You can disguise your writing, but you usually revert to your tics when you're tired or rushing. And the fingerprints on the prison letters. To me, that suggests Paul was involved. Maybe he wasn't the only one.
So a partnership.
Maybe he started it. Maybe he was the original writer. And then his family, caught in this toxic cycle, picked up the torch. Maybe Karen Sue wrote some. Maybe Mark wrote some. Maybe the Circleville writer became a persona that different people used to attack their enemies.
That is a terrifying thought. The idea that the writer wasn't a person, but a weapon that anyone in town could pick up. "Oh, I hate my neighbor. I'll just send a Circleville letter." It becomes a contagion.
Exactly. Secrets weaponized. The town eats itself alive.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Freshour died in 2012, claiming he was innocent until his last breath. He set up a website. He wrote a book manuscript. He never wavered.
But if he didn't write the letters from prison, and he received a letter saying, "The joke is on you," then the real architect of the Circleville terror was watching the whole time. They watched Ron die, they watched Paul go to prison, they watched the town turn on itself, and they were laughing.
And they were never caught.
That is the Circleville letters, a mystery wrapped in a booby trap inside a prison cell.
It makes you want to check your mailbox a little more carefully today.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe install a camera. Thank you for listening to this deep dive. If you receive any anonymous block letter mail, maybe don't open it.
And definitely don't pull down any signs you see on your way home.
Good advice. We'll see you next time.